sir, a second Pacific team has been kicked out of VCT. Yeah, that's right. Talon are out. As you can see in this update, Riot Games has made the decision to terminate Talon Esports partnership agreement with the Valorant Champions Tour and remove them from VCT Pacific. The decision follows Talon's failure to operate and manage its team in accordance with league standards, including a pattern of significantly overdue payments to players and inability to demonstrate sufficient financial capacity to continue participating in the VCT. There was delayed payments to players and other financial issues. Riot worked with Talon for over a month, but Talon was ultimately unable to meet the standards required to continue. The individual players affected have been informed and allowed to explore other opportunities within our esports ecosystem. Riot Games has sent invitation to a number of teams in APAC as part of a selective competitive application process to find a replacement team. We will provide you with an update when we have finalized the process. So, Pacific needs a new team. And quickly, let's just take a look at a tweet from Jake Sin, who is the head of VCT Pacific. Some interesting things to note here that I've spoken directly with the affected players about their options. They are more than welcome in our ecosystem, whether it's part of another team or even across multiple teams. I truly hope we'll get to see them competing in our league again. We'll get to that in a second. As for a replacement team, we're going to run a selective application process to find one before our 2026 season begins. Our priority is to identify a team that can resonate with our Thai community to ensure we can maintain representation in VCT Pacific. We'll share more when we can. So, this is kind of the crucial difference, because obviously everyone is going to talk about the Bleed situation when that happened, you know, around this time last year, when Bleed got kicked from VCT Pacific. And what happened in that instance was that Boom got elevated into Tier 1. Now, that situation was a little bit different because Bleed were an Ascension team. And so the Ascension team left, which meant that Boom, who came second in Ascension that time, were therefore the team to get promoted because they were the next best Ascension team. This one is a little bit different because Talon are a partnership team. This is more like the Koi situation, where it isn't necessarily just like, oh, Boom again managed to finish second in Ascension, therefore they will be the team who goes and you know, plays in Tier 1. They're going to actually run a process and find an org that they want to be the partner team. But with that said, Boom, I think, probably will be one of the favorites to take this slot. The reason is, the Boom obviously were in Tier 1 last year. They are a competitive team. They did come second in Ascension, and whilst that technically doesn't matter, I think it can do a little bit here. But more importantly, perhaps, is that Boom, I think, were a perfectly good representative last year of a Tier 1 team, right? Yeah, they had a very bad Stage 2, but in Stage 1, they were a really nice story. You know, they won all of their group stage games. You know, they were competitive for, you know, most of the year, even if, you know, Stage 2 didn't go that great. You know, they were still a good addition, I think, to the league as a team. And therefore, you know, if Riot kind of wants to play it somewhat safe, then Boom probably are a good option because, you know, like, well, they were there last year and it was absolutely fine, so just go for them again. But as the head of VCT Pacific said, they want an org who perhaps represents the Thai part of VCT Pacific, because that's kind of how Pacific is made up, of all those, you know, different countries, and they want representation for those different areas and regions of Pacific. So if we are looking for a Thai org, then Full Sense is probably the one that you would most go towards, just because Full Sense are a full Thai org as far as I'm aware, and you know, have been competing in Valorant for a very long time. They've been in multiple Ascensions tournaments as well. They just haven't managed to win them, you know, but they've been in Valorant for an extremely long amount of time. You know, they merged, I think, with Made in Thailand at one point as well, who were the other kind of big Thai team. So I would guess that Full Sense would be, if they want to go in a Thai direction, one of the favorites as well. Now, the thing that's very interesting about this, though, is that Talon aren't a bad team, though. Right? When you look at Talon and the players that they had, these are good players, right? This is a team that very almost made it to champs, and, you know, for particularly people like Primi, but really everyone on this team is a Tier 1 player. And so that's going to create some kind of interest, I think, where I think Riot very well might pressure whoever they pick to at least pick up some of these players, right? Because they know that they are a good team. It wouldn't be kind of, you know, throwing to pick up these players because they are good players. I think there will be some pressure to pick up, you know, at least some of these players. But even if there isn't, even if they just pick an org and, you know, they don't end up with any of these players, I think probably what will happen is, of course, we are quite late in kind of the roster construction process right now, But if you're some of these other teams, particularly, teams perhaps with rosters that, you're not 100% happy with, or maybe you didn't get exactly the players that you wanted, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, we could go and get Primi, that's going to open up some opportunities. I would expect these players to end up in tier 1 one way or another, whether that's on the org that replaces Talon, or whether that's, maybe they have to wait till after kickoff, maybe they have to wait till stage 2, but these players are very good players, right? And I do think that they will definitely get a shot, because, I mean, they very, very, very almost made champs, and, could have made champs. If it wasn't for their last game against RRQ, which was a 3-2 loss in the lower final, they were very almost at champs. And to any org out there, like, if you can get a team that, is competing for champs, that's the ultimate goal, like, you're going to want these players. Now, obviously, these situations suck for the players, but sometimes there can be a silver lining for those players, and it can actually end up being a good thing. An example of this would be the G2 guard situation, when the guard won Ascension, but then the guard didn't want to ascend, and then there was going to be no Ascension, and then there was a massive community backlash. But what ended up happening was G2 basically said, hey, we'll buy all the guard players, we'll buy the slot, and those players, we'll just pay them a ton of money, right, to do that. And, then the G2 players became some of the highest earning players in the entire VCT. So sometimes it can work out well, and maybe, hopefully, that happens to the Talon players too, right? Where a bunch of Thai orgs go, no, we'll pay these players an absolute king's ransom to come and play for us so that we can get the slot. That's what I'm hoping happens. I'm not sure it will, but that would be a good outcome for the players, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be bad. Now, this was not necessarily a massive surprise. There had been, rumors and speculation about Talon kind of struggling financially, for a while. That had kind of been bubbling away in the background for some time. So that's not necessarily a shock that this decision has come about, but obviously it's not a great look. I mean, the bleed situation, I don't really feel like that's not really a black mark on VCT Pacific whatsoever, because one, bleed were an Ascension team, so Riot didn't really have as much control of, who took over the slot, and, maybe looking back, they perhaps wish that they wouldn't have allowed bleed, to be in the league, but, that situation was kind of a weird one. This one is one of your partnership teams, going. Koi obviously have gone in EMEA as well, so it perhaps is looking a little bit worse. This might, in fact, we know that 2027 going after this year is going to be the year where those initial contracts have ran out, and so they're going to be choosing orgs, for the next version of it, whatever that looks like, and maybe, more financial stability will be kind of, have a greater emphasis, because obviously Riot doesn't want these kind of situations, but obviously we'll have to wait till next year to find out exactly what they're doing. So farewell, Talon. Honestly, Talon, I think, were a pretty interesting team for most of their time in VCT. They started off pretty bad, but overall I actually think they were pretty interesting, and I kind of liked having Talon in the league. Unfortunately now, they are gone, and we'll have to see who comes about. Hopefully these players do get onto teams, because I think they definitely deserve it.